For almost a year, my wife Emily had been a ghost in our own home, physically present but emotionally absent, always just out of reach. She'd come home late, claiming exhaustion, and conversations that once flowed easily were reduced to one-word replies. Touch became rare, even eye contact felt like something I had to earn. Every time I tried to bridge the gap between us, she'd brush me off with a weary sigh and the same tired refrain, "Not now, I'm exhausted." At first, I told myself it was just work stress, that things would get better once the pressure eased. Then I started blaming myself. Maybe I wasn't exciting enough, maybe I wasn't the man she married. I tried harder. I cooked, I cleaned, I waited up for her, I made myself smaller and smaller just to keep the peace. But the rejections kept stacking up, each one a tiny fracture in my heart, and slowly I began to realize that I was the only one still fighting for us. Our 10th anniversary was approaching, and I had been quietly planning it for months. A small lakeside hotel, the restaurant where we'd had our first real date, a necklace she'd once pointed out in a shop window. I wanted this day to remind her of us, of what we used to be before life got in the way. 2 weeks before the big day, I finally told her, trying to sound excited rather than desperate. She barely looked up from her phone. "That weekend? I've got a department retreat. I can't cancel." I stared at her, stunned. "Emily, it's our 10-year anniversary." She sighed, irritated, as if I'd asked for something selfish. "You're being dramatic. We can celebrate another time." Another time, the same hollow promise she'd been making for months. Something inside me went quiet that night. Not angry, not hurt, just done. While she slept, I opened my email and cancelled everything. The hotel, the restaurant, the special package. I didn't warn her, didn't argue, didn't beg. I simply let the date come and go in silence, like any other Tuesday. On the morning of our anniversary, I woke up early, made a pot of tea, and sat at the kitchen table as if nothing was different. Emily rushed out the door, already stressed about work, barely pausing to say goodbye. "I'll be late tonight," she called over her shoulder. "The retreat planning is a nightmare." I nodded calmly and said, "Okay." She paused, clearly surprised by my lack of reaction. Perhaps she'd expected me to fight, to plead, to remind her what day it was. But I gave her nothing. That night, I went out alone, not to the fancy restaurant I'd booked, but to a quiet little cafe where I sat and thought about the past year of my life. I thought about how small I'd made myself, how I'd been waiting for her to choose me again, and how I'd finally stopped believing she ever would. When she came home after midnight, I was already asleep. The next morning, she seemed unsettled, glancing at me warily. "You didn't say anything about yesterday," she finally said. "Our anniversary. You didn't even try to remind me." I looked at her then, really looked, and replied, "I did. You just didn't care." For the next few weeks, Emily tried harder than she had in a year. Compliments, texts during the day, sitting close on the sofa, promises of change. But something had already shifted inside me. I wasn't angry anymore, I wasn't even hurt. I was simply detached, like I'd already said my goodbyes in my own mind. When she finally asked what I'd planned for our anniversary, I told her the truth calmly. A trip, dinner, a gift, all cancelled. Her face crumpled. "Why wouldn't you tell me?" she whispered. "Because every time I asked for you, you rejected me," I said. "I wanted to see what would happen if I stopped asking." She cried that night, blaming work and burnout, insisting she hadn't realized how far she'd pushed me away. But the painful truth is this. When you spend a year telling someone you're invisible and they refuse to listen, their sudden awakening comes far too late. I told her I needed space, not as a punishment, but because I no longer recognized myself in this marriage. She panicked, promised therapy, swore she'd change, and perhaps she meant every word. But sometimes, by the time your partner finally wakes up and chooses you, you've already emotionally walked away. Canceling our anniversary wasn't revenge, It was me choosing myself for the first time in years. And when Emily finally understood what she'd lost, not the dinner, not the gift, but the man who used to try so hard to love her, she realized that some silences speak louder than any argument ever could.